with The Corpse Washer, our first novel. We've done a few poems for this course in terms of application, looking at comparative literature across time and space thematically. For this particular class, we are doing a kind of a reading, a book club type reading of The Corpse Washer, if you like. So I would like to hear your takes. I had invited my PhD student to come and talk about Sinan to you based on his PhD research. He wasn't allowed to be excused because he's a staff member at a center in Iraq. So he said he would really like to, and he apologizes and asks if he could come again after the break. So I thought, why not? Like it would be nice for you to have questions for him after our session today. So you would have developed your own thoughts, hopefully, based on listening to each other's take on this particular novel. And we also have Salim, who is based in Iraq, and his take on this novel. So I think that would be nice. So for today's class, it's going to be quite light and easy. I've given you some tasks on the WhatsApp, and I've also given you a few YouTube videos with Sinan specifically talking about writing generally, talking about responsibilities of the writer being more engaged with society and society's issues, as well as Sinan talking about the experience of being in Iraq in the 1980s and then 1991 thereabouts. He had to leave right after the US bombed Iraq the first time, and he talks about it in 3 different situations. So do make time to watch the video. That will help inform you of the context of the writer's background, of the context from which the novel in question that we are discussing. So you get a sense of what really is the theme here. What is it that Javad, the central character, is experiencing, and how is that comparable to the next novel that we will be discussing the week after you come back, which is The Yellow Bird? How is that comparable with that novel? Okay, so for today's session, I'm not going to kind of like restrict your reading of the novel. I'm in fact welcoming you to say whatever you saw when you were reading the text. Let's go with that. It could be the theme of love or lack of, it could be the aspiration of becoming an artist. Shah, you may look at that and say, yeah, I can relate to that, and I can understand how that kind of like is a passion that sustains you. But in Javad's case, does it sustain him? So we're going to probe into that. But I also gave you a task on the WhatsApp group that I said you need to identify excerpts from the novel. The reason being, it's easy when we're looking at a work of poetry because it's short. You can keep reading it again and again, and you can find imageries, even metaphors and what have you. But the minute it is a novel, you are having to break it down from the context of the plot, this is what the story is, to the said and the unsaid. Remember last week, the novel is incomplete. You as the reader, you are bringing it to life through the art of reading closely, reading between the lines, asking certain questions. So I want you to identify certain passages that you found relevant to the theme that you are interested to explore. Okay? So all the tasks that you will be doing will also be included in your e-task. I will give you a task at the end where you can upload whatever you are exploring for today's session. up on our UKM folio. So take notes, whatever comments you get from any of your friends or feedbacks in terms of their own reading, take notes so that you may develop your idea further, at least for the purpose of the e-task. Now, if any of you choose to use this novel and compare it with maybe the Yellow Bird for your assignment, you can do that. You will expand on that. Okay. So who would like to go first?
I don't mind going first.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I've written something, but I also will talk about it more once I go. So first, I think this book is an easy read. But to be honest, I'm not being dramatic, but it gives me nightmares. It gives me nightmares because how Jawad actually described the corpse condition, the bodies, the faces. I'm not saying that it's terrible, but it's it's not something that I do every day. So yeah. Also, when it comes to his routine of settling the corpse, the writer gives an idea. Though the protagonist doesn't want to do it, he actually needs to be better at it. And then another point that I see in the story has elements of surreal, if it isn't magical realism, I would say, especially parts when we didn't know at first it was his dreams, and how his father appears in the corners and he also hears his voice, but from like other ways. And I kind of feel like, though it's possible to happen because of my belief, it could be surreal for some people when the souls of the dead visit you, to the point that you get nightmares almost every night, and you get insomnia. And I like how the pomegranate tree stands strong in the story, though they always break its branches to use it for the corpses. I think it's there because of the dead, I feel, and also it has always been there since forever. I also saw, like you said, we need to have a few passages, right? Okay, let me start. In chapter 6, because it's very short, right? An old man with long white hair and long white beard wakes me up and says in a voice that seems to come from afar, "Wake up, Jawad, and write down all the names." So here, Jawad also asks him, like, "Who are you?" He wants to identify this man, like, and then this man goes on, "You don't recognize me? Get a pen and a paper and write down all the names. Don't forget a single name." So here, if you notice, it didn't say that it's in his dream, like, oh, suddenly I'm awake. He doesn't say that. So I think it has the element of magic realism where it happens in a real time, but you have these fantastic elements in it, like scary elements in it. So yeah. And then also in chapter 20, also about the same concept. This happened when his father has died. Jawad heard a voice yelling, "What are you waiting for?" So he turned to look for the voice, and then the father was sitting on a chair. So but it didn't seem to him like it's weird or anything. It's just like a normal thing that would happen, like when his dad asked him to do something. So also in chapter, sorry if I'm going a bit fast, and then in chapter 30 as well, this would be the second last, I think. This is I think this is scary. This is like Jawad hears a male voice begging him to sprinkle water on him, and then after you read a few lines, and then there goes another man saying, "Me too, please." You see, so I think that's not normal to happen every day, but it is situated in a normal timeline reality. But yeah, it doesn't say that it's in his dream. And also, to finish, remember when there's a part in chapter 32, he saw Reem standing under the pomegranate trees, and her breast became pomegranate, fruit. So that's not, that's not normal, but also it happens. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say lah. That's what I saw in when I read this story. Yeah, I wanted to say existential, but I have yet to find like specific. But I also see that lah. I cannot, Yeah. Okay. That's all.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody wants to comment on what Shah has presented?
Oh, listening to Shah, I think there's a lot of symbolism in what you have commented, because I didn't go down the pomegranate tree, but then just now watching the videos, pomegranate tree is the title of the novel. So yeah, so I find that fascinating. I'm sorry, am I losing my connection? Okay. So yeah, so I think I'm not sure if pomegranate has a certain importance in Arabic culture or Muslim culture, not that I know of. I'm wondering about that now.
Good, thank you. Anybody else who would like to comment on Shah's reading?
Yeah.
Okay. You go first, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Like one of the examples that Shahira gave, I found like the old man with the white beard and all. I think it's very, it's very interesting. If a Muslim were to read it, we'd assume that it be an angel of death, Israel, right? But if a non-Muslim were to read it, they don't quite know, because the image of an angel in their mind is different, something with wings and whatnot. But if we look at like the excerpt, I think I have it with me as well. Yeah.
Page 26?
Yeah, page 26, yes. Don't forget a single name. They are the names of those whose souls I will pluck tomorrow and whose bodies I will leave for you to purify. So instantly my mind goes, wow, he's dreaming of Malaikat Israel or what. But I think for those that don't know Islam very well, they don't know what the hell who this old guy is. So I think it's very interesting. You have to find out about the Muslim religion for you to like understand this excerpt. Yeah.
Aimee?
Since Lisa has mentioned about the Israel symbolism, about that symbolism. So if Shah actually finds the story a bit scary, for me, I think it's beautiful in the sense of the appreciation, the ritual, how the ritual of washing the corpse shows the appreciation of the dead body. So it's something that I never dive into, and I'm the type who goes into like gory. So this does not make me scared reading it. Instead, it fascinates me because and while reading this story, else than being fascinated by the corpse washing ritual, which I never cared about before. And then I learned about it now, and I noticed that there's a little bit difference between the Malay way of washing the corpse and also the Iraqi way of washing the corpse. So that point is very interesting to me, which I think I will do a little bit of research just because I want to know about it. And I also it reminds me, this person, the main character, I like that I'm reading the story as if like I'm reading his diary. So we can see from his point of view, because we see everything from his point of view. That is like something I really like about the story. And it's sad. This story is so sad. I don't even know how. Did you cry?
I cried. I cried. So yeah,
it's just that I want to add to Shah's comment about the book.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, but the Israel thingy, I didn't make that connection, you know? So that is very interesting. Now,
What did you think, Ruby, when you read page 26? What did you think?
because what I understand, maybe because I also base my own personal experience, is the huge desire for paternal approval. So whatever all figures, because it is repeated, your father, your father's doing this job, your grandfather, your great grandfather. So for me, Iraq serves not just a mere country, but also a family, or a family, and then represented by their culture and their civilization as well. So, but maybe because I'm not that religious, so I didn't make the link.
But what
Yeah.
about the line? What about the line that was it Lisa who read it? Don't forget a single name. They are the names of those whose souls I will pluck tomorrow and whose bodies I will leave for you to purify. So who is the I in that context then? Who did you think it was? Is it the
I know
dictator?
that.
Was it when you say it's the figure, the patriarch? How does that
I
connect?
always figured it. I figured that it is death. But I didn't link it to the angels because he didn't sound like a religious guy. So it's almost as if I'm reading Orhan Pamuk. So I'm viewing religion from the way he's viewing religion, because there's not a single chapter in which he prays. Oh my God, can I say that? Yes, I'm saying that. Yeah.
So you, in your mind, Javad doesn't come across as religious, and because of that, you don't assume an angelic figure would be coming into his life and talking to him, something like that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yes, I take it as it is a manifestation of his personal trauma, because it is all for me. It is all in his head. So Shah said magical realism, which I agree as well. But for me, it's all in his head. If that makes sense, yeah.
I also at first view it the way Ruby view it, because I view the old man as not death, but instead I view it as war, because a war is happening during that time and a lot of people died. 2 million people died, I think, out of this war. So when I'm reading chapter 6, yeah, initially I viewed the old man as a representation of war and how war actually killed so many people. And Jawad was there as a corpse washer, and he has to purify everybody's body.
Okay, cool. Alice, did you want to say something?
Dr. Kai, go nice.
Okay,
so
then
my-
we'll just go around. If anybody wants to respond to what Shah has said, Salim, did you want to say something to what Shah presented? Oh no, we can't hear you.
Do you hear me, doctor?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, doctor. The thing that impressed me much is the way of telling the story by a Christian person. This person, as if he's a Muslim, and he's picturing all the procedures of washing corpse, and this is, to me, it was so strange. And as I understand, this man lived this situation in Iraq. And something else, impressed me a lot, which is the pomegranate tree, in which he used as a symbol. Okay, but to tell the truth, I have read the Arabic text, and there is a kind of exaggeration, because I'm living in this situation concerning describing the actions and what happened to Iraqi people. It was like that, but not that deep, to tell the truth. And I don't know, something else struck my attention, which is Jawad. By the way, let me tell you something. My name is Jawad. You know, so something strange, because in Iraq they call people by their son's name. For example, when you say Ahmed, they say Shahab's father. When they say Muhammad, they say Jasim's father. So when they say Salim, they say Jawad's father. So they usually, in the southern part of Iraq, they call me Jawad. Okay, so many things strange, in fact, happen here. Different things, in fact. Yani, let me tell you, actions are varied. You know, washing cups, working with the art, and even some actions. I saw some actions in this movie, which has to do with practicing some, you know, sexual acts, and so it struck me a lot, and it impressed me a lot. So the story for me is full of contradictions. Things has not to do with that. Washing corpse has nothing to do with the job of Jawad, and some actions of Jawad himself as a son of a person who is doing some such a sacred job, which is washing corpse, which is it should be done by a mullah, a chief of religion. So it was so strange for me, doctor. Thank you.
Okay. So was that your reading of it? Was that your reading of this book?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. No, I wanted to know if you had any comments about Shah's reading of it.
No, thank you.
No? Okay. Fuzla, did you want to say something to about Shah's reading of it?
So about the pomegranate tree, I also see a lot of symbolism in the pomegranate tree, because I think pomegranate in Christianity, if I'm not mistaken, it symbolizes life, like everlasting life, something like that. And then
Christianity. In Christianity?
yeah, and then I think it also symbolizes like fertility. It's more to like life and fertility and life, and to know that there's like a pomegranate tree in like a place where you wash corpse, and it is like it grows by drinking the water from the dead. So that also, that contradiction is very, for me, I saw it as very significant in the story, because like Salim said before, the contradiction I think is very significant. And I saw I think for me it also shows the contradiction, is also shows the identity conflict in Jawad's character. So like because Jawad doesn't really want to do the job, right? He doesn't want to be a corpse washer. But his family, it's like a heritage. It's something that his family has been doing for a long time. And it's in this book, he was resisting against this family tradition. So the contradiction is very apparent. There's like one part where is it? Wait. I think the part where he talks about when he first took the job after his father's death, where they didn't have money, so he had to work as a corpse washer. That's this part in chapter 33. He says, the
In
the
chapter
extract
what?
about-
Sorry, in chapter?
33.
Chapter 3.
33.
Sorry?
I'm about taking off my jacket. I told Mahdi that he was welcome to pluck the pomegranates later and take them home. You don't like them? He asked. I do, I said, but not from this tree. So that, I think it's like it shows his struggle. You can say that he doesn't want the job, but he has to do it. And then at the end, I think at the end of the story, that's the last part. He says, I am like the pomegranate tree, but all my branches have been cut, broken, and buried with the dead. My heart has become a shriveled pomegranate beating with death and failing every second into a bottomless pit. But no one knows, no one the pomegranate alone knows. So here he put himself as the pomegranate tree. So he kind of assumed the identity as a corpse washer. But then it also means that his aspiration as an artist has already died at that point. And his identity is already broken, is demolished. So I thought that was an interesting point.
Was that your reading or was that in response to Shah's reading?
It's my reading, but it's also in response because she was talking about the pomegranate tree.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you so much. Alice. Alice, yes.
Yes,
Can we have your reading?
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
I would like when Alice has finished, I would like to hear your response to what Alice says. Maybe ask her questions, to probe further in terms of her reading. Thank you. Go ahead, Alice.
Okay, Doctor. How to say? First, this novel really scared me because the job corporate washer is I'm very not familiar with that because there is a totally different way in China, yeah. And then I searched this job and found that what it is my theme is the trauma of the war. Yeah. And I used the third chapter to support my theme. The third chapter 3, yeah, to support my theme. Doctor, can you hear me?
I didn't catch you use what to support the trauma of war?
The third chapter in this novel about Java's brother's death. Yeah. In this chapter, the description of
did you say third chapter?
this, yes.
Third chapter. Okay, so page.
Page 22, maybe. Is that right?
Page 22?
Yeah.
Maybe because it's in EPUB, so it's different pages.
Yeah, I think each of us use a different version of different topics.
Oh, okay. So sorry. So what version are you all using?
I'm using EPUB. So it depends on the font size. The page number changes.
Yes.
Okay. My chapter 3 is it starts with page 8. Can we get everyone's chapter 3? What page does your chapter 3 begin with?
When it's vertical, it's 17. When it's horizontal, it's 21.
Ayo, why so difficult one?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can search the words, right, Alice?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You all have it a lot easier than me. I have to like belit, back and forth.
I just tell the the story is okay about that.
What is chapter 3?
Yeah,
Correct, Alice?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
you all look for your version in chapter 3. Okay.
yeah.
Middle of chapter 3, or did you want to focus on a particular paragraph?
I, I don't know if you can find where
Because it's not a very long chapter anyway. So
Yeah,
which
yeah. It's about Java's brother's death. Yeah.
Maybe if you have it on screen, maybe she can share it. Maybe she can share the screen with us. If
Really?
I try because I use my iPad.
Oh,
Let me try. Okay. Please wait for a minute.
what does the paragraph start with? Just read me the sentence where the paragraph started.
The only time I saw my father cry was many years later when he heard that my brother. I'm sorry for my bad pronunciation of the name.
That's the beginning of the chapter. That's
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
paragraph. Okay, all right. Okay, we are all on the same page. The first paragraph of chapter 3. Ken? Okay, go ahead, Alice. What did you want to say about this?
In this chapter, the description of Java's mother and Java's father was included, and you can see in my version is the last second paragraph. It's about Java's mother. She stood next to the taxi, beating her head, staring at the coffin and screaming. Oh, that's the sentence. Can you find it?
It's the second last paragraph. Yeah.
I feel very sad when I'm reading this. And this because his brother joined the war and finally died. So this sad ending is this sad event is called was caused by this war. And next next is next page. Yeah. The last paragraph, next page, is a lot of who to describe his brother. Got that? And
This is all still in chapter 3, yes?
yes.
Okay, in August of 1990. Is that the paragraph?
A silent tear fell on my cheek as I rushed to deliver the news of Emma's death to my father. Emma, who used to play soccer with me on the street, and this paragraph, there's lots of who to describe his brother. Yeah, and it seems that his brother is very good person and did very and the better his brother is, the more cruel this war is. Yeah, this is a trauma in his relatives. From his relatives' perspective, I think it's a very interesting. What is very interesting is that through the Java's eye, we can see everything. And when I'm reading this novel, it seems I'm the Java, and I bring this kind of feeling in myself. And I think what was said by the author is that this is something happened in only in one family, and because of this war, there is this thing happened maybe in hundreds or thousands of families. So I think it's not it isn't the war isn't described directly by soldier or something or someone was involved in the war directly, but behind this war, lots of people were influenced. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
So the soldier's perspective you don't get in this book. You get the civilian's perspective. Yes.
Yes, doctor.
Yes, and you can pick it up later when we're reading the Yellow Bird.
Yes,
The break.
that's
Then
that,
you
that's
can
yeah. That's what
juxtapose.
I'm interested in that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Who wants to go next? Sorry, any comments to what Alice said just now?
Oh, I love that Alice mentioned the multiplying effect of war. Like losses can happen in every family, even our families, but then war multiplies it, causing a ripple effect. So I guess at least we share something in common with the Iraqi people during those times, but there's also a difference in terms of the magnitude of suffering. So yes, that's really great.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mine would be the same as Ruby because the trauma just doubles and triples, you know. So yeah.
I personally liked what I don't like this idea, but I like what Alice had to say. The better the brother is, the more cruel the war is. So it's almost like when someone is painted as righteous and his loss appears to be a bigger loss to the world, you know. So the war comes across more evil depending on the kind of people who died in it. So there's a kind of a perverse way of evaluating war. You know, if it kills bad, quote unquote, bad people, then we don't look at war as something terrible, something bad. But when it takes innocent civilians, it takes the lives of people who are doing good in the society, then war comes across as a bad thing, a bad human phenomenon, right? So maybe we need to evaluate that idea. Maybe we need to look at war and say, is war a good thing or not? Full stop, rather than who gets killed and who doesn't. So I think that's a very deep philosophical question, but because in the Yellow Bird, for those of you who have started reading it, the opening 2 paragraphs of the novel is about war. Straight up, it's just about war, and you're like, who is this war that the narrator is talking about? War is shown to be prostrating. War is shown to be not to eat and to almost be very religious in the way it presents itself. And you're like, so who is this war again? Because war comes across as this very righteous power, so that's something to probe later, inshallah, when we come to reading that. But yeah, thank you, Alice. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Because I'm using my iPad, but I've extracted the relevant passages. So if I may, can I share my screen? It's a Microsoft Word. It's not like PowerPoint.
Can,
All
but
right.
give us the chapter for those of us who are still old school, literally
So let
old
me just
school.
all right. So let me just share screen so that I know, I need to search for the chapter. Let me just present the word first. All right.
Okay.
Do I share my entire screen? Yes, I do. Okay. All right. So I'm here. Got sound like a retiree. Okay. I'm wondering if you guys can see my screen.
Coming up.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Let me just look for not content. Not content is where. So chapter 1. I think it should be second or third page. The paragraph starts with, "Death is not content with what it takes from me."
Okay, wait for it. It's page 3. For those
It's
of
page
us with
3. Okay,
books, it's page 3.
wonderful. Okay, all right. I hope you guys are there.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So basically, my reading, I would like to summarize it with one word: death. So for me, what I get from the story is I really loved diving into Dawat's psyche, or how he experienced his whole life, basically. So I came up with this statement: death functions as an identity marker of vocation, of personal trauma, and selfhood. Because I noticed that he oscillates between these three aspects of his life. First is vocation, what he does. So there was this because he did try to work with his father, and then he went to sculpting, and then he went back to his vocation as a corpse washer. So what he does is the first thing that defined him, and then second one, personal trauma. So that came about after losing his brother. So what he does and what he loses, I think that basically shaped his notion of selfhood. However, in my opinion, throughout the whole novel, he is still struggling and grappling with his identity. Even nearing the end, where he almost made it in escaping Iraq, but he didn't. I think he had to go back and then return to that job. So I'm really fascinated by his relationship with death, because I think he is rather obsessed with it. Obviously, not by choice. It's just how his life has been. So I found a lot of paragraph of him dealing with the notion of death. So the first one is the passage reads, "Death is not content with what it takes from me in my waking hours. It insists on hunting me even in my sleep. Isn't it enough that I toil all day tending to its eternal guests, preparing them to sleep in its lap? Is death punishing me because I thought I could escape its clutches? If my father were still alive, he would mock my silly thoughts. He would dismiss all this as infantile, unbecoming to a man. Didn't he spend a lifetime doing his job day after day, never once complaining of death? But death back then was timid and more measured than today." So that in this paragraph, I find that he's relating to death, some sort like an employer, like he works for death's approval. So it does shape him in what he does, i.e., his vocation. And then the second one, I also love this passage where it reads, "If death is a post," oh, I'm not sure. Wait, well, let me look for postman paragraph. Postman.
I think it's just
It's
in
the
the
same
bottom.
page.
Is this
It's the same
wonderful?
page. It's
Okay.
the paragraph after, not the
Ah,
immediate one. It's the one after that. Yeah.
okay, wonderful. So I'll just read it then. "If death is a postman, then I receive his letters every day. I am the one who opens carefully the bloodied and torn envelopes. I am the one who washes them, who removes the stamps of death and dries and perfumes them, mumbling what I don't entirely believe in. Then I wrap them carefully in white so they may reach their final reader, the grave." So this also is linked back to his job or his vocation, as if it is very much entangled by uh, by his sense of, okay, so he needs to do this, and every day, because our work really makes up the biggest percentage of our life, I feel. Okay. And then the third one, obviously, because a lot of you guys have mentioned a brother. So yes, I think the brother's death also indicates personal loss or personal trauma in his life. So I think I'm gonna skip that. But I really like Dr. Rai said, the better the brother, uh, the worse he feels about himself. Yes.
That's not my point. That was Alice's
Oh,
point. So I
oh
was
yes, there was yes,
just read,
Alice's
yeah.
point. Yes, sorry. So yes, so there was this one part, I'm not sure which part is this, where he feels guilty because he couldn't stop himself. Let me just read the paragraph. Amuri, of whom I was greatly jealous because he was the favorite, pampered, an ideal I could never approach. I feel guilty because I couldn't stop myself, even in this moment, from wandering so selfishly. Would the news of my own death in this seemingly endless war leave a quarter of the pain and sorrow that Amuri's departure will have left behind? I wiped my tears and scolded myself for this utter narcissism. So now after his brother died, he was thinking, oh, if I died, will my death cause perhaps a quarter of the pain and sorrow that I'm assuming he wanted his family to experience or to show? So yes, so again, he's using death as an identity marker to validate who he is. All right.
That's chapter 3.
That is chapter 3. Chapter 3. Thank you so much, Dr. Rai. Yeah. And actually okay. Then I'll just leave you because I have a lot here. But I'll just leave you to the last one. So the last one, I think, is on the last page. Is it in the last page? Let me just check that. The living die or depart. Is it chapter 54? Oh, okay. So it's the last page of the book. So I just skipped to the last. It reads, "The living die or depart, and the dead always come." I had thought that life and death were two separate worlds with clearly marked boundaries, but now I know they are conjoined, sculpting each other. My father knew that, and the pomegranate tree knows it as well. So I view this as somewhat a conclusion to his strained, obsessive relationship with death, whereas where he basically admits death is part of life. And then just now you mentioned on the WhatsApp you want us to look at the said and the unsaid. So what I interpret about the unsaid here is that um, is it a coping mechanism when we live in times of conflict and war? We must deal with our mortality, or we must confront it. Hence, to accept that death is part of life, is part of us making peace with the situation. So yes, so that is my reading of the novel. Okay, I'll just stop sharing.
Thank you. Who would like to comment on Ruby's take?
I have like a few comments. I actually pinned down the same excerpt as you did the second one about the letters. Like, if death is a postman, then I receive his letters every day. Every day, I am the one who opens carefully the bloodied and torn envelopes. I am the one who washes them, who removes the stamps of death and dries and perfumes them, mumbling what I don't entirely believe in. I think it's interesting that how you say the metaphors here are interesting. How he kind of how do you say makes a connection between the dead bodies and letters, and how he says that he is the one who washes them and purifies the letters is what he's saying. I feel like to make something like of this metaphor, he must have seen a lot of things to relate his experience. Like it's dead bodies and letters are so, how do you say, it's so different. But I think he's gotten so used to them that it's very normal now. It's like receiving letters. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, Ruby, I like that you point out about his vocation. I suddenly remembered that he went to like cyber cafe a few times to like also want to know about his classmates and, what they're doing now with, art and whatnot, although that he's now washing corpse. So yeah.
Anybody else?
Ruby, I have I want to know about your opinion, because as I was reading this story, and then I take a look at the main character and how he is so obsessed with death, would you say that he actually develops maybe he developed PTSD through what he saw as the son of a corpse washer, like the disfigurement that he sees from the corpse? Do you think that it affects him, that it actually it acts as a catalyst to his obsession towards death, else than he himself living in a war situation? Would you say that?
I would say yes, because I think nearing the up in the second part of the novel, there's a lot of this very abrupt short paragraph, chapters, right? If you guys notice. So when I flip it, already next chapter. So those I view as nightmare. So looking back, what I feel is because his father worked as a corpse washer, hence he thought that death was natural to his life, but that just basically numbs people's feeling. So he is numb. He couldn't process that facing death is hard on him. And then plus there's a certain reluctance and hesitance. He didn't consent to being a corpse washer. So imagine doing something that you don't like is already traumatizing, forcing yourself to wake up every day. And then doing such a heavy work would be bad, and because he did serve in the war, but he didn't serve it to the extent that his brother did. So I think his PTSD is basically just carrying the family's legacy, and then in that legacy, there's a huge trauma involved as well.
Oh, I have a question to Dr. and also Ruby, because Aimi brought up PTSD, right? So in Malay, we have this badi, right? So would you say that, Ruby? Because, okay, badi for Alice and Salim, it is, I found here, is bad effects experienced by a person as sick as approaching animal carcasses or dead people killed, exposed to.
Badi?
Yeah, badi, like in Malay, B-A-D-I, doctor. Have you
I
heard of
must
it?
apologize. This is my first time hearing the word. I had to Google it.
Yeah. Because
What is it? What does it mean?
okay, I'm just gonna copy this and
So it's a Malay term apparently. I'm just Google the word. It means you will fall sick once you get in contact or you are within the proximity of a dead body. I do know that some people cannot look at dead bodies, me myself included. So it can be that. But isn't this a universal thing? Is it a universal thing?
because in we study the state of Malaya, there has, I mean, there's the term badi in it lah as well, but it's written in Malay language. Yeah, because when visiting the dead, right? When we visit, so we always have to wash ourselves after that, because or else we're gonna get nightmares and everything. So yeah, it relates to what Aimi asked us now.
But even in Islam, after you have gone to visit the home of the deceased, you pay respect, or maybe you even go to the grave site and help, we are asked to come back and clean ourselves first, wash ourselves and clean ourselves. Don't go straight and hang out with your family. Come back and go clean yourself. So that is the practice. So maybe that is something connected to it. Salim, did you want to say something? You put up your hand.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know, doctor, as if I have seen that there is a relationship between the country and the pomegranate tree here. In my opinion, he want to deliver a message, which is the country who want to live a good life and to be prosperous, and so the people of the country must sacrifice in order to make this country happy and live in a prosperous life. And the same idea, the pomegranate tree, which has been watered by the water of of dead corpse.
Yep.
So these dead corpse made the tree to grow and grow. So my idea is, I have seen that there is a great connection between the pomegranate tree and the country. At the time of Saddam Hussein, let me talk about that. Nobody dared to speak about the regime, the regime of the country, about Saddam Hussein, about the Ba'ath, and it was impossible for anybody to criticize them. So he expressed that by that. He said that we have to sacrifice for our country. Our country, if you want to have a liberated country, we must sacrifice. So pomegranate tree is grow as a result of the water of corpse washing. Yes, doctor. This is my idea. Thank you.
Okay. I'm still digesting what Ruby is saying as well. So I'll come back to Salim's point in a minute. Does anybody wants to say anything else about what Ruby talked about just now? I want to kind of put some footnotes here as you are talking about this novel for the next novel, because whatever you are saying today, there's points of comparison to The Yellow Bird. When I forget who said about numbness just now. Was it Ruby who said about the numbness due to the trauma?
Yeah.
Ruby, you talked about death as an identity marker, which I find fascinating, and it says a lot about your mindset as well. Very bleak and troubling, Ruby, so I'm like, gender is an identity marker, race is religion, maybe nationality, death. Very, very troubling, but we'll deal with that psychological issue of yours at another point. But jokes aside, but that point of numbness, that point can be comparable to Barthel's character in The Yellow Bird, and how killing, not death, killing. So from the perspective of a soldier, you don't see death because you're the one with the gun. You're the one instigating. You're the one taking lives. So quote unquote, when we talk about death, a few of you talked about death, the personification of death. In The Yellow Bird, the soldier plays the role, right? The soldier is the one taking lives, right, with the gun. So literally shoot, and then the person dies, right? So the numbness is now in the hearts of the soldiers who are doing the act of senseless killing civilians. So that point can be comparable. So you see the outsider's perspective and you see the insider's perspective. So that element of death. And then the coping mechanism also. How does Javad copes with the trauma of seeing one dead body after another and one limb and a singular head comes in? How does Javad deals with it? And then in The Yellow Bird, how do the soldiers cope with it? Cope with what? Cope with the one killing, with being the one killing the civilians. So you have death in the one book and you have the act of killing in another book. But it leaves both groups, if you like, with PTSD, with the post-stress traumatic disorder. So the element of trauma is experienced from two perspectives, right? And then Alice, you said something also. You talked about how Javad, as a reader, we take Javad's point of view. we look at the world and the experience of the Iraqi in this context and the trauma of war from Jawat's point of view. Likewise, in the yellow bird, you also take another point of view. You take the soldier's point of view. What does the soldier see? You know, and there's a scene at the opening of the yellow bird when the soldiers are literally shoot one more. Okay, they count how many killings they have done. So that kind of, as Jawad is counting and taking down numbers just now, was it Aimi who read, is it Aimi or Shah who read the names, take down the names of the people that, take these names down. The old man said that, take
It's
these
Shah.
names, Shah, take these names down because today I will be coming for them. The soldiers in the yellow bird, they number their deaths. They number their killings, sorry. Right? What was that? Was that 147,000? Like what's that? Is that number 100? So to them, it's just a number. The dead, they are just a number until it happens to one of them. To Jawad, it's not just a number, it's names, it's faces. It's so death is, it's so real that, as Shah also said, it becomes, Shah and a few of you said, it becomes like a nightmare, right? You see apparitions, you see figments of your imagination comes to life. Is this real? Is this not? Is this an old man talking to me? Is this a figment of my imagination? Yeah. So it becomes so real. Death becomes so real. What happens? It robs you of your life. You're not able to live. And as you rightly said, it numbs you, right? So I want you to kind of take, those are footnotes. I want you to kind of keep those notes in mind, because when you read the yellow bird in a couple of weeks' time, you can see that, wow, this is the insider's perspective of how death is experienced because of the war perpetrated by an outsider. And then you get the outsider's perspective in the yellow bird of being in that context and doing it mindlessly. They are literally doing it mindlessly. So in a sense, the theme of being mindful and mindless can also be read in these two novels. You know, how mindful is Jawad when he is reading and he's reading certain verses. He says he doesn't even know whether he believes in half the things that he's reading. He's just uttering those words, you know, as he's washing the corpse. So being mindful of your actions. The same thing in the yellow bird. You will see that. How mindful are the soldiers? Are they really doing something for their country? Are they really doing something for the sake of their country? Or are they just mindlessly going around saying, you know, okay, you got to go there and shoot whoever is moving. So just shoot. Whether it's a civilian, whether it's a threat, it doesn't matter. Whether it's an old man, an old woman, a young child, it doesn't matter, right? So the sanctity of keeping peace, that's what soldiers are meant to do, right? That's their job, to keep peace, to protect the civilians, right? But you see the yellow bird and you see what happens to one of the soldiers, Murphy, right? You see what happens to Murphy. After a while, the numbness consumes him. So Batal is having to try to, make peace with that. How is Jawad making peace with this? So another theme, you know, you've got many possible themes that's emerging here. But sorry, Salim, did you put up your hand again? I want to come to Salim's point of the pomegranate tree, especially this particular tree, not pomegranate generally. I mean, I forget who said just now, pomegranate, it could be a symbol for Christianity. Was it Fuzla? I forget. Yeah, Fuzla. Yeah. So in various contexts, the pomegranate tree or the pomegranate fruit, which is also mentioned in the Quran, it means various things. But in this particular context, that particular tree, that one tree, I like what Salim said just now. That tree is nourished or watered by what water? Not somebody. I've got a few plants outside in my balcony, so I would water it. That's not how that particular tree is watered. It comes from the water of the body that's been washed. So it's almost like the recycled water of bodies, dead bodies. So when you wash dead bodies, especially dead bodies that have been mutilated or physically abused because of being shot or whatever, there will be blood. There will be residues of blood. So the water is not clean water. The water is water that is being used to wash corpse. That's the water that nourishes this tree, sorry. And what kind of a fruit does it bear? So it's very deep, and I particularly like that idea that it's the nation and how the nation is having to sacrifice so much for the betterment of who? For the betterment of the ruling authorities, for the betterment, who is getting the good end of this deal? Who is getting the raw end of this deal? So I just wanted to make those points. Salim, did you want to say something?
No, thank you, Doctor. Just I wanted to say that the story, the novel is full of themes. So I'm scattered because there is a theme of sacrificing, and this person is traumatized. In fact, most of the Iraqi people are traumatized, according to psychology. So whenever you see somebody's, for example, somebody is killing somebody else, this is a kind of trauma.
Yeah.
Even the death, the death word, the word death itself, it's a trauma. And psychologically, it's not, allowed to children to see, for example, corpse or dead people, because they're going to be traumatized. And the role of the father here is to educate him. And before going to the other details that this is death or this is the end of the life, or because he is not in the he doesn't understand what does this mean. So most trauma in general, I will say from the first page to the last page is trauma. And there is another connection, which is the color of the pomegranate, which is most of the time is red, and the blood is also red. So there is a kind of connection between the two things. Thank you, Doctor.
No, I just thought of a point, because like if you're reading a certain novel, like for instance, K.S. Maniam's novel, what's it called again? In a Far Country. Sorry, I lost it for a second. His novel In a Far Country. In that novel, there is an image of a tiger that is being captured. And the central character in the story, Rajan, he's of the migrant community. He's an Indian Malaysian, right? So he goes into the jungle with this Malay character, Zul, I think, to capture the spirit of the tiger. And the spirit of the tiger is the spirit of the land. So tiger there symbolizes the land. So you're right. Different writers may use different natural elements. It could be an animal, it could be a plant, it could be a tree, it could be various things, right, to capture the essence of the land. So I take that point. But I think the more significant point that almost all of you are making, I haven't heard from Fuzla, I would make time to hear that. but almost all of you are making is that death should be traumatizing, right? Either seeing somebody you love pass, or as a child, Salim as rightly pointed out, you know, you shouldn't expose young children to corpses because it'll traumatize them. You know, it'll give them nightmares, as some of you said. You know, reading this, Alice, you said it was like a nightmare, right? A few of you said the same thing. So that's the whole point, I think, right? I think the writer captured that. Yet at the same time, it's so normalized in Jawat's life, he can't be traumatized. That's the sad irony of it. That as Salim rightly points out, death, Iraqi people are so traumatized. Anyone in the context of war, in the war zones, you know, in the world, they go through it so much that they no longer feel, you know, that sense of sadness, sorrow because somebody else has passed. And I think that's the danger of it. And you see that to a smaller degree in the current circumstance when people are dying of the pandemic, right? Or even generally, like doctors. You speak to doctors, especially those in emergency units. You know, when they see one or in chronic situations like oncologists. You know, my brother's an oncologist, right? So you know, people who come stage 3, stage 4 cancer, you know, and they pass. So it's like, after a while, if you're working in that kind of a situation, 1 year, 2 years, maybe you'll still feel, maybe not, because you've been studying this for 6 years, right? Imagine facing death on a regular basis compared to somebody who is not in that kind of a context. So what is normalized, right? What is normalized might not be something that is a healthy thing to be normalized, right? You don't want trauma to be normalized. You don't want to fear the loss of your emotional state. And that's what happens to Murphy in The Yellow Bird. So Murphy is like that symbol. Do we have the equivalent in this novel, in The Corpse Washer? Is Jawad that symbol? At which point does he kind of like his heart just gives way, which is another definition of death, right? What is death? When your heart stops, right? But can your heart stop even before you passed? Can your heart literally stop beating, metaphorically stop beating before you literally pass away? Meaning, can your heart stop feeling what? What does the heart symbolize?
Love, obviously.
What else?
Living.
Sorry?
Living.
Living, good.
For me, it's selfhood.
Okay, good. So that organ in your body, it's beating the blood, pumping the blood, and the minute that organ stops beating, you are no longer functioning. You're dead, right? You cannot function, right? But that organ has also come to symbolize, or at least that part of your body, not the organ necessarily, but that part of your body has come to symbolize a lot of things, right? When you're sad, you don't clutch your head when you're sad, or you don't clutch your stomach when you're sad, right? When you're anxious, you may, right? You may get butterflies when you're anxious. But when you're feeling sad and remorse and something, you've lost something, you tend to clutch this part of your body, your chest, right? Your heart. That's also where the warmth of the individual comes in. When somebody says you are cold-hearted, what does that mean? You have no sense of humanity. You're cold-hearted, meaning you do not have that love and compassion and warmth for your fellow human being, right? So that can also be a manifestation of numbness. A few of you said the same thing, right? There is a level of numbness. So at which point did Javad in this story lose it? Murphy, you can already start to point. When you read the yellow bird, you can point. At which point did he lose it? Not until, you don't wait until when he just goes AWOL and just goes, he goes stark naked and walks off. At which point did he lose it? Now, at which point did Javad lose it? You can also explore that, right? How does war affect people? How that chronology moving from one to another. At the beginning, when his father was the corpse washer, he was still enjoying life. He was still enjoying life, right? He was still going to school. He had dreams. He had aspirations. Now, at which point did he lose it? Did he, because he was still having a girlfriend, at that point, he was still, he still had love, if you like. He still had maybe passion, maybe not love necessarily, but he still had connection, a human connection. That is also within your heart, right? The ability to make connection to people. And somebody said, death means living. The need to live, the need to want to escape this trauma. At which point did he lose it? So that's something worth exploring as well, right? At which point, and the point of no return, basically. When did he reach that point of no return, for instance? So I'm giving you more thoughts, more ideas, because when we come to compare it later, any one of these points, but Salim is absolutely right. This novel is imbued with themes. You can see it from any perspective, and it's up to you how you want to take it. But before we go any further, let's Fuzla, did you want to share your thoughts?
I already shared some of the thoughts that I was going to share before. There's a few that I would like to add.
Lines not very clear, Fuzla. Sorry about that, but I didn't hear you very well just now. It's very echoey. But if you could go through your points one more time, I would appreciate that.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I have said some of my points just now, but then I would like to say the thing that I got from the book, because I brought up identity conflict, right? So that's what I was that's what I'm going to talk about. So as you can see, Jawad has an aspiration to be an artist. You see in chapter 8, there's this part where he says, one day after class, Mr. Ismail asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up, Jawad? Without hesitation, I said, Jawad Salim. So he is convinced that he wants to be an artist. So that is like his aspiration in life, right? But his father wants him to continue the family tradition to be a corpse washer. And that's like a contradiction between his aspiration and his father's aspiration for him. Where as said in chapter 8 as well, there's this part where it says he said that art was intimately linked with immortality, a challenge to death and time, a celebration of life. So art is a celebration of life. So it's like it's so in contrast with his father's ambition, his father's work, right? And we can see this kind of relationship, Jawad's relationship with death, like most of you have said before. But it's more towards like an aspiration that he doesn't, from my point of view, an aspiration that he doesn't want to follow. It's something that he is resisting upon. And you can see in chapter 4, it says here, but I imagine that death has followed me home. I couldn't stop thinking that everything that father had bought for us was for by death. Even what we ate was paid for by death. When we had dinner that night, I watched father's fingers cut the bread and put food in his mouth. It was hard to believe that these were the same fingers that had rubbed a dead body only a few hours before. So he kind of has this kind of, he has something against that, and it's because it's something that against his aspiration of life. Um, in the book, from my opinion, in my
Are you
opinion,
using, sorry Fuzla, are you, because I love that quote. Are you using an ebook or book?
I'm using ebook.
Oh Lord. Which page is it? Because I really like that point, because I think that
Um,
is the point when he starts to become numb.
yeah,
If you wanted to explore, at which point did he begin to, unravel, if you like, Um,
it's on my book. It's page 55.
it's the second last, no, it's a one, two, three. It's the fourth last paragraph, right?
Yeah,
Okay, page
yep, correct.
22, sorry. Am I the only one using a book?
Doctor, I'm with you. I'm the old school type.
Oh God, I feel so awful. I'm like, I have got hard, something hard in my hand. You've got something hard in your hand. Obviously, you've got your iPad, but yeah, right? Huh.
Yeah, I prefer the hard copy as well, but I only have the soft copy. So yeah,
But I think that's the start. Coming back to what Salim said just now about the psychology of how death affects people, especially children, and I think that's the beginning of his trauma. That's the beginning of
yeah,
Jawat's trauma, with the unseen, with the idea of death, not the body per se, but with the idea of death. Okay, go ahead, Fuzla, continue.
okay. So as we can see all the conflicts between his aspiration and um his father's aspiration for him. In chapter 18, it says here, when I had informed him of my decision to go studying art and that I did not want to follow him in his profession, he said, "Who will wash me then?" My mother insisted that I should be the one to wash his body. She thought it would provide the reconciliation that should have taken place when he was still alive. He so would be in peace if you wash him. She said, "Please do it for God's sake and mine." But I refused adamantly to do so. So, as you can see here, even after his father's death, he he still refuses to um follow his father's aspiration in a way, because it, if you continue the passage, he says, "How could I tell her that I wasn't totally convinced that there was such a thing as a soul?" And then I had feelings of guilt because I had let him down by abandoning our ancestors' profession and had failed in my own endeavors. So here we can see, like, he already has that conflict of identity. He failed in his own aspiration. He could not really pursue his career as an artist, but he also abandoned his ancestors' profession. So um, he's kind of losing his identity. And then you can see from the chapter 30, the sculpture chapter, the one where it's very scary, where the sculpture was begging him to wash the
30,
body.
did you say 30?
Yeah, I think it's chapter 30.
Go ahead.
Okay. So for this chapter, because um this chapter was talking about sculptures, right? Like as we know, he wants to be an artist. So he was looking at these statues, these sculptures of a man, and then but this man, this statue is actually begging him to wash him because he's dead. So it's like, um it's like saying that he's supposed to go, like the statue is like begging him to wash. It's like, it's like the aspiration of being a corpse washer is like trying to pull him. That's like a struggle between his aspiration of being an artist and also the profession of corpse washer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's the conflict between his aspirations and his responsibility, or his calling, right?
Yeah, and then he's that's in chapter 52. This is when after he's trying to escape from Iraq. It says here, I couldn't identify the feelings that overtook me after I left. After the sadness, I felt like I was saying goodbye to them. I was overtaken by guilt towards my mother, but I also thought of the dead who would wash them now. So, at this point, he's actually escaping from Iraq, but then he's still thinking about the dead. So,
Which line? Sorry, Fuzila. Which chapter was that?
Chapter 52. I'm not sure it's the page.
It started with, I couldn't identify the feelings that overtook me.
Okay. Can I continue?
Just a second, looking for the.
Oh, okay.
Okay, found it. 178 for me. I couldn't identify the feelings that overtook me after I left. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What did you want to say about that?
That part where he says, but also I also thought of the dead who would wash them now. So he actually cares about his profession at that point, where he realizes the weight of his responsibility, like being a corpse washer. Now that he's gone, who would wash them out? So it's like he's accepting the responsibility, right? He's starting to care about being a corpse washer. And so at the end of chapter 54, the last paragraph, I've said this before, but yeah, the part where he said, I am like the pomegranate tree, but all my branches have been cut, broken, and buried with the dead. My heart has become shriveled pomegranate, beating with death. So in my opinion, it's like him accepting his role as a corpse washer, and also losing his aspiration as an artist. So that's all for me.
Thank you. I think that connects to what Salim said just now about sacrifice. He feels guilty, right? He wants to go off and have a life and be happy and do things for himself, as all of us here, right? I'm sure all of us here, you have your choices. You wanna fulfill your dreams, and you've got certain things you are trying to achieve, maybe ambitions, maybe goals, right? Imagine if you have to put all of them on the shelf, literally and figuratively, and then pursue the dreams or aspirations of others, right? In the name of responsibility. So that's a huge sacrifice, right? If you can find it in your heart to find joy in what it is that you are expected to now take up, that's okay. But if you cannot, again, that's another moment of death, a mini death. Coming to what Ruby was talking about, the selfhood. So your sense of identity is connected to many things. Of course, your name, your nationality, and all that, but also to your dreams. It should, right? You must have dreams. You must have certain things that you are, maybe places you want to visit, people you want to meet, the kind of communities you want to develop, maybe a community of writers or community of whatever, practitioners, right? Imagine if you cannot fulfill them. There's a kind of a mini death that happens, that your heart no longer beats the same with that same intensity. I'm not being poetic, but I'm saying that, you know, this is another definition of death, right? So in this book, there are many, many definitions of death. Death can be personified as Ruby was talking about death as an identity marker. So death is definitely personified from chapter 1 right through. But there is also that dimension of death as something that is experienced both literally when the heart stops beating and then the corpse washer comes in to wash, shroud the dead body, and then the body is buried, to also mini deaths, right? When you are not able to pursue your dreams, mini death, when you're not able to escape this traumatic life, another death, not even mini, a really huge death. So something happens in your heart that suddenly, after many, 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 many years, it just becomes numb. So to the extent that you no longer find joy in going on to live, you're just doing it for the sake of, you know, for your loved ones, because nobody else will be doing this job. So it becomes an occupation. It's no longer you living your life. So that again, it's a kind of a deeper level of death. And you see the similar theme echoed in the Yellow Bird. You know?
Doctor, would you say that escapism be a part of the theme of this story? Because I noticed that he tries to run away from war or death through love, although it's unrequited, because all of the relationships mentioned in the story ended up not being a happy ending. Where Reem, it seemed I view Reem as someone who has already passed away, because Jawad only dreams about dead people, and Reem, she suffers from cancer. So I'm assuming that Reem also has passed away, and then he has like this relationship with his cousin. I think Gaida, I think that's her name, but which again not ended up being a happy ending from both him and Gaida. And then the fact that he's doing art, and art is a well-known mechanism to express oneself, to escape from the world, and just to create a life. So I also view that as his way of trying to escape or to distract himself from death and also war. And the fact that he also tried to left his hometown to a better place, but he couldn't. So in a way, to me that is when he died, when he had stopped trying to run away from whatever he is destined for, which is washing the corpse, which is death itself. So in a sense that all of us in the end as a human, we cannot escape death, but we can distract ourselves before death comes knocking at our door. So that's the way how I view everything actually.
I like that. So the idea of escaping is a form of distraction. And the minute he stops wanting to escape is when he stops living. So that's another, you know, interesting way of looking at life. You know, I've never seen life from that point of view, as a form of distraction. So you distract yourself by doing this, that, and the other, you know, and the minute you stop doing that, you stop living. That's one way of looking at life. Sorry, I mean, we haven't gone through yours, right?
Actually, I'm bringing. At first, I was focusing only about love. The theme of love, how everything is unrequited, and then I realized that he did a lot of things, but a lot of things that he did and ended up not being something that he enjoys doing anymore. For example, he likes art, and then he went for his painting job rather than doing the washing the corpse. But he didn't find joy in painting anymore because it's a repetition. So again, his happiness, a momentary happiness or hope, dies there. So yeah, after realizing that, I think like the bigger picture of the story from my point of view is the theme of escapism, but I don't know the exact term to actually summarize everything that happened to him, the journey of him running away from his own country or from the war that he experienced in his country, because I believe in the story it's not about just the Western having a war with the Iraq people, but also there's a civil war happening at the same time between the Shiite and also the Sunni, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like he's trying to run, he hates the idea of being categorized in both groups. He does not identify himself, and he's sort of like doesn't believe in God. So he's like trying to run away from everything that could defy him. So yeah.
This is very much within the Shia community. The corpse washer is within the Shia community, not within the Muslim Sunni community. This is from the Muslim Shia community. So yeah, you're right. There is an internal issue within the nation as well. But yeah, interesting. I like what you said. I mean, I like what you said. Jawad only dreams of dead people. That's a statement. You know, it's like that's in a form of escapism too. Like you're not living, you're only thinking, you know, it's how people say when you're only thinking about the past, you're not being present, right? You're not in the here and now. When you're always thinking about, you know, when I was 7, I enjoyed playing in the park, you know, in the mud. When it rains, I would just jump into the mud and just mess about. You know, when I was 12, you know, I used to climb up the tree here and pluck some fruit. So you're constantly thinking about the past. So in Jawad's case, he's constantly thinking about people who were once alive, who are no longer alive anymore. So what about those who are still alive in his life? What about them? You know, are they not important anymore? So that is a kind of an escapist mindset, you know. So yeah, I think that is worth exploring, especially within PTSD, the context of trauma. How does the persons who've gone through trauma, how do they cope with life, right? And there are two different kinds of scenarios in this case, right? In his case, the trauma is because he's constantly being exposed to dead bodies. So that's slightly different. He is constantly having to deal with dead bodies. And that causes a lot of trauma for him. Later, when you read The Yellow Bird, it's a different kind of trauma because they are the ones causing death. And that's psychologically hurting them. Because as human beings, if you keep taking life, after a while, it numbs you, right? But in his case, he's constantly having to clean one dead body after another, after another, after another. And that does something to him. Good. Who else did I miss? Lisa, did I get to you?
I don't think so yet.
Go ahead. Salim, I'll come back to you in a minute.
I think like most of these points have been covered, but so far I think I'll just it's funny like how Aimi said that art for him is a form of escapism. To me, kind of it's also sort of his burden as well, because coming from like an art background, he's so used to leaving people as his subjects, which goes back to Fuzla also touched on this. Art is also a form of immortality, a form of paintings. You see like old paintings such as the Mona Lisa, the Blue Boy and whatnot, they could last for centuries, but you don't really the subjects themselves have long died, but art is forever technically. So for Jawad, who's used to the concept of art as an immortality, I think he takes it harder than anyone else would because of his background. Death is not a concept that he's very much open to. For him, if he could, he wanted to avoid it. Yeah, so that's why this story is hunting as the ghost that hunts him in his dreams. Yeah, and I think the sense of realness in this story is very much close to the heart. You can see the character Jawad in his stages of grief. He's gone through depression and lastly acceptance. But his form of acceptance isn't expected. I don't think like it's a good thing. He's reconciled to his fate, but he's not really happy about it. And yeah, and the story is the writer writes it in a very interesting way. I think Shahira had said that before, that you can't tell what is real and what is not, such as like from the excerpt. One of it is saying she is lying naked on her back on a marble bench in an open place with no walls or ceilings. There is no one around and nothing inside except the sand. I too am naked, barefoot, dumbfounded by everything around me. I can feel the sand under my feet and the cool wind. I move slowly toward the bench. When and why has she come back after all these years? Her long black hair is piled about her head. A few locks cover her right cheek as if guarding her face, which is not changed with the years. Her eyebrows are carefully plucked and her eyelids, which end in thick eyelashes, are shut. Her nose guards her lips, which bear pink lipstick as if she was still alive. Her nipples are erect. There is no trace of the surgery. Her hands are clasped over her navel. Her fingernails and toenails are painted the same pink as her lipstick. Her pubic hair is shaved. He's also very detailed in his description, which I think is also because of his artistic background. So he looks at the corpse very much in detail. I've also seen I've also done once corpse washing before, but I was never like Jawad and looking into like what type of hair does the corpse have, is her pubic hair shaved or whatnot. I don't wonder much about it, but Jawad seems like a very attentive person. He's a person who's very attentive to details. So I can't imagine what it's like to be in his shoes and to see like a dead corpse from an artist's point of view. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, I think spot on. It's because he comes from the artist's point of view. You know, imagine if he was a medical doctor. This is just another, cadaver that you have to go through. You have to dissect. You have to study. You have to learn. So this now is just another body you have to cleanse. But he approaches it from an artist's point of view, and he is very observant. So he looks at everything and imagines himself sculpturing it for himself, perhaps, right? So I like what you said, that art it's both a burden and a form of escape. Can you explain that? How is it a form of a burden?
For him, because of his background, how do you see it? Art makes him like a very person who's very much attached to life. He's very attached to the concept of living. So the concept of death is very far away from him until he has to do it himself. So it's
how is art a burden? How is art a burden?
I think it's a burden for him in many ways. It's conflicting. Like with his job, he has to and then as I've explained before, it's something that prevents him, I think, from truly escaping, because he sees the world in a different light.
What does art immortalize?
It immortalizes everything, living subjects, everything he sculpted, he painted.
So art immortalizes life?
Yes, I think so.
And I like what you said about the acceptance, this notion of acceptance, to reconcile with his fate, that this is, destiny, this is what I'm meant to do. But that level of acceptance doesn't come with peace. It comes with almost numbness. Maybe you've got aspirations, you want to do masters in some programs, you want to go travel the world or whatever, and because of the current pandemic, you're having to resolve the fact that you're just going to have to do it here locally. You've come to a level of acceptance, but you are accepting it with a kind of there is a kind of move towards the future rather than stagnate, rather than not moving at all, not moving forward. Jawad's case, that level of acceptance is almost like he's given up. That's not acceptance, is it? You know, so I like that idea of what is acceptance. You know, when you reconcile your dreams with destiny and you say, okay, this is my fate, I accept it. So he's got his dreams to become the artist, but he couldn't. So he's now having to resolve to the fact that this is what he's going to be doing for the rest of his days. He can't even leave the country. But that acceptance sounds more bleak in his eyes, right?
Can I say it sounds like resignation? I was thinking of the opposite word because in Malay, oh my God, Malay culture, there's this pasrah versus redha, subhanallah. So so how active is Jawad in forming his destiny? So he's
Okay,
just
let me
resigned.
throw another word. How hopeful is he with his life? So the level of hope. You know, when you talk about acceptance, is he hopeful for his future? For a young man, right? Does he have any more hope for his future? Or is that level of acceptance come with hopelessness? That's it. This is all.
Doctor,
This is all. Yeah, go ahead.
Doctor, I think Jawad becomes more and more hopeless in this novel. Yeah, before his father dies, he's an ordinary young man, have dreams, have ambitions, and I think as you mentioned the definition of death, so he experienced lots kinds of deaths in his life, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So his father's death kind of just robbed him of the opportunities for a new life, for future, for love, for marriage, for, you know, for just growth generally. He kind of like just stopped growing as a human being at some point. So, okay, who else did I miss? Did I miss anybody else? Salim, did you want to say something just now? You're muted, sorry.
Okay, sorry, Doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You raised the question at the beginning of the session. You said, is war good for people? And I will say something else. Is death good for people? So you have to ask the two questions. The answer is yes, to some extent for many people, because the profession of Jawad's father was washing corpse. So when, for example, a person die, his relatives, or let's say his father or his son, daughter, they pay for him, and by this money they can live. And returning back to your question, is war good for people? I will say yes, to some extent. Maybe someone will say no, but I will say yes, according to Iraqi context. In Iraq, we say, so if you don't experience tough, hard life, you will not be a strong man. A man who is, for example, till now, we are shifting the blame on the new generation, that they can't live by themselves, they cannot depend on themselves. But if you back to my generation, for example, I'm 1971, okay, so I can do everything. Give me whatever. For example, ask me to live in a desert, I will, you know, I will try to leave that situation and manage myself. But the new generation, they can't do anything. They just are looking for new mobile phones, new cars, new stuffs, things like that. But go and ask me, the question is entirely different. War created strong men. So my question was just as a comment on your first question, war and death are, in the point of view of mine and the narrator, which is also who is Sinan Anton, is something good. Thank you, Doctor.
I think you're right. There is something generational in the discussion that every generation will have their own take. You know, once upon a time, war was seen as something that is that brings the nation, that unites the nation together because you have a common enemy, right? Somebody you are fighting against. But in this context, I'm just wondering though, because what was the enemy, or who was the enemy? You know, and was the killing, as somebody mentioned just now, millions of death, was it 2 million? I mean, was there any point to this, or was it a senseless killing? So when your nation is being threatened and you are protecting your nation, I think war makes sense, right? When you are trying to defend your honor and your nation's peace and sovereignty from being robbed by an outside force. Yes, I see the value in it. My father was a soldier for 21 years. So you know, he was in Congo in the 60s. So he would tell us stories as well. So I see the relevance of it. But in this particular novel, in this particular context, and more so when you read The Yellow Bird in 2 weeks' time when we compare, you look at it from the point of views like war narratives as a genre. It's a known genre. There are many war novels, right? But in this context, The Corpse Washer as well as The Yellow Bird, do you see the same? Is it pound for pound weight in gold? Is it the same weight in terms of its worth? Yes, that's the point. And Salim, I'm older than you, so we are in the same generation. So don't worry about it. So, but the point
It's
being,
okay, Doctor.
I completely understand, because it's generational, and you know, when we talk about World War I, if you're looking at comparison, if any of you want to compare novels, say take the poetry of what's his name? Oh, good Lord. What's his name? Dulce It.
Doctor, you're on mute, I think.
You're muted.
So clever. Hang on. If you compare the text against, can you see what I'm sharing?
Yes, Doctor.
Yep, Doctor.
Yeah. So if you compare, Wilfred Owen was a soldier who fought in the war and who died just a day or so before the war ended. So this is one of his poems, right? And he describes what is happening in the trenches, right? When the soldiers are experiencing an attack, gas attack, right? So if you compare to World War I, World War II kind of representation of war, you see the value of even then you don't, because the men, you know, young men are going off and they're dying, and you see the pointlessness of it. So you see this perspective of what's happening in the trenches, and then you compare it to what's happening from the soldier's perspective as seen in The Yellow Bird, and then you compare to how the civilians are suffering the consequence of war. So when you triangulate the experience, then you can see, what does war really do? What kind of an effect does it have on those who are in the home, being left behind, the children, the women, right? The elderly. What is happening in the trenches when the soldiers are really there? Right, and then what's happening from the perspective of the soldier who is taking the shot, who is from the safer space taking the shot. So you see the generational representation, and how this idea of war, which in The Yellow Bird, it sounds as if it's one unified, personified entity. It is not, right? War in the context of World War I or II is different, war in the context of Iraq, when the Americans come in and invade a sovereign state, it's different, right? So the element of war being personified, it might sound as if war is a universal concept, like peace, like love, like death. It's universal, right? Even this notion of the Grim Reaper. Shah talked about the old man, right? The idea of the old man and the old man representing death. So if you Google the Grim Reaper, basically the personification of death, this is the image that you get. You know, what's a Grim Reaper is basically death personified. It's the Western concept of the representation of death. So you don't see an old man with a beard, you know, like a grandfather figure. You don't. Okay, so how death is personified is also not universal. Likewise, how war is personified is also not universal. So when we do comparative literature, you may compare this text with something of another generation, maybe looking at a 20th century war narrative. And you can see the generational difference, right, between how war was perceived then and how war is perceived now from the civilian's perspective. Maybe you want to take two novels from a soldier's perspective, i.e. The Yellow Bird and then Owen's poems, or Hemingway's novels, you know, stuff like that. So you may compare the generation. So I agree with Salim that generationally war may be seen as something that the nation does for the sake of its sovereignty, for the sake of keeping peace in the world. But when it's senseless, like the way it is being described, I think, in the Corpse Washer as well as later in the Yellow Bird, I think there's food for thought for the younger generation, for us to kind of say something that do we want to partake in this life, in this environment, in this world today, where one nation can simply come into another nation and just invade and say, you know, I want to instill democracy in this land. And who are you to decide, to dictate? So I think there is that element that we also must take into consideration. So I'm just going to go around before we conclude, starting from Fuzla. Do you want to say any final thoughts for the Corpse Washer, at least the first reading of it?
I just want to say that it's very encouraging to listen to everyone. I really like Ivy's take on it, the escapism part. I thought that was a really, I didn't consider that when I was reading it, but now I can see it. So thank you, Ivy, and thank you everyone. It was a really enlightening session.
Thank you. Amy?
I like when Doctor and also Salim mentioned about the generation. I've read somewhere that the older generation, they say that the younger generation is, you can see in Chinese, I think there's a mention that this generation is called the strawberry generation because they are easily breezed. And I think I've read somewhere, it says that the reason why this generation are this way is because the previous generation lived in the trauma. They lived through that trauma. That is their life. And the newer generation are the consequences of the trauma. So it's like we're the aftermath of the trauma. Hence, we are a little bit emotional because this generation, their emotions are suppressed. They are very set on war, on saving themselves. And the lack of emotion from the previous generation affected this generation where the emotions are very haywire. I guess that's what I think that's what the article mentioned about it. So I think that's how why the father, Jawat's father, are okay with washing the corpse, and why Jawat actually takes the corpse washing differently than him, because his father was not that affected and he was introduced to the corpse washing, and it was not for him, it was not natural. He could not accept it because of the different generation gap. That's how I see it in terms of generational perspective.
Interesting, thank you. Maybe the father had a more stoic acceptance of his responsibility. You know, this is what I have to do. I'm going to just do it stoically, you know, without having to mull over it. And maybe you have a point. The younger generation, maybe, you know, they express their emotions a little bit. And I like the fact that, what is it? They're like strawberries. They bruise easily. Okay, I will quote you on that, Aimee. If you are inaccurate, then I'm going to, you know, come back after you. So thank you so much for that. Lisa?
I think like the novel overall is a very interesting read. I haven't really read anything like it with the general theme of like death being so dominant, but it was very it opened a new doors, like say that, and it left me kind of after reading kind of like staring at my wall. I don't know for how many minutes, but pondering over the words over and over again, because the writing were very poetic, I think. But yeah, the generation thing was interesting. I mean, strawberries.
If you want to Google about it, I just Googled just to reconfirm. It's called the Strawberry Generation.
Okay.
What year does it start? Strawberry Generation. What year does it start? Is it 2000?
I know I think it's from according to Google, it's from the Taiwanese people which are born 1982 onwards, because they call it strawberry because they're bruised easily. They cannot withstand social pressure or work hard.
Okay. Those of you who fall in that category, I would take offense. If it was me, I would so be offended with that. You know? Come on, you know, what is this?
Like Jawad, I've accepted it.
Okay, good point. Well done. We just made a literary joke. Very nice. We're such nerds. Shah?
Yeah. Apart from that, I actually cannot wait to discuss the Yellow Bird, because that also has like, of course similarities, but also differences in like a micro level as well. Like Murph, I very kasihan like his state of mind and everything, but we'll get to that next week lah. But for this book, I think I'm very thankful that I read it. I had a chance to read it, and yeah, it gives me so much perspective. So thanks to you guys also. I like what Alice said as well, because like majority we're all Muslim, so we might take it differently from Dong Lai, but yeah, her point of view is very interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Alice.
Doctor, I'm interested in the definition of death. I just like Sahir. I can't stop to I can't wait to talk about the Yellow Bird. Because in the Yellow Bird, most of the soldiers are not willing to join the war. If it seems like that once they join the war, they almost died for once. Yeah. So if I want to compare the two novels and to make a theme like according to the death or definition of death. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Looking forward to that. Ruby?
Oh, it has been a very enlightening discussion, but I must say I was very shocked when Salim said that the war is good. But just to I was shocked. It took me 5 minutes to process that. But now I understand it is a much needed perspective, because in Malaysia we have not experienced a civil war.
Yeah.
And then we talk about it, we think about it in a conceptual or abstract manner. hence, that's why I'm very glad that we have people from other countries in this in this class, the UKM, because in UITM we couldn't have that. Yeah, but then I would also would like to say, because people has started talking about yellow birds. I wish I read yellow birds first, to be honest, before
No,
I.
I'm glad you did it. I'm glad you did it because I want you all to kind of like try to keep it to this novel first.
Oh, I see.
But at the same time, I'm just giving you all footnotes. That's all. So whatever
because yellow
whatever you are
birds,
saying, yeah.
because I've read Yellow Birds and I find it I find it harder to digest. I wonder because if you check the author's background, they are quite similar, even though they are on a different side of a coin, because both of them experienced war and then they went to literature as some sort of a redemptive journey. Both of them took master of creative writings or master of literature and whatnot lah. So I find similarities in the way they talk about things, even though they are from the civilian and the military side. So yes, I also cannot wait to talk about Yellow Bird.
Okay, good. Next, Salim, we'll end with you.
Thank you, Doctor. To tell the truth, just I want somebody to and if you can upload the a copy of the novel, because I don't know, my copy didn't work, the electronic one in the morning. So can somebody upload it for me on the
Yellow Bird or the Corpse Washer?
Yeah, both of them, in fact.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, thank you very much for Amy's note when she said strawberry generation. So thanks, forgot you are not a strawberry generation. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you all, sisters. And I appreciate all their comments, and especially Yunus, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So the copy that you have, the Arabic copy, because the translation is also by Sinan. The author did the translation himself, right?
Yes, Doctor, but I don't have the English version.
No problem. But when they were quoting just now, so you couldn't find that in your copy, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's worth making sure that we all have the same copy, especially when we discuss the Yellow Bird. Okay.
A unified copy is going to be much better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much, everybody. This has been a very interesting discussion. I find this novel usually captures students' attention. This is the second cohort that I'm using the Corpse Washer, and I'm always concerned, like, are you all going to be able to get it? Get the gist of the story? Is this going to be too difficult, too challenging, especially set in such a context, right? But I'm pleasantly surprised every semester that I do this book. Students tend to have a lot of things they want to say about it. So, as students of literature, one of the things that we always ask ourselves is, can I find myself in the story that I'm reading? Right? Can I find myself? If I cannot find myself, how am I going to say anything about it? Right? But if you hurt yourself, Shah, you wanted to say something.
Oh, because just before I forget, if you don't mind, I actually already suggested this copy. I mean this book to a couple of my friends, because actually it gained their attention when they noticed the Corpse Washer. The title itself already grabbed their attention, so they're reading it now.
Oh, brilliant! Wow. Yeah. Okay, cool. So you can have your own reading group with them and educate them with all the things that we have explored.
I must say, Dr. It is beautifully written. Yeah. So I wonder, because people say that in Arabic it should be 5 times more beautiful because it's
original language. Yeah. So I also, because I told them it comes in pair. You need to read Yellow Birds as well. It comes in pair.
Don't think.
But 3 of them are boys, so they like like walls and everything. So
Okay, okay,
yeah,
okay.
sorry
But-
to cut you, Doctor, but yeah.
No worries, no worries. No, but it does not come in pairs. Sinan Antun did not go around promoting Kevin Powers' Yellow Bird. So that's a fabrication there. But I appreciate the sentiment. But you know that fear of you picking up a book and asking yourself, what is this about? This is not about my life. This is not about my country. This is not about my context. So as a reader coming from an outsider's perspective, you're reading this and you're asking yourself all these questions. The fact that you are able to bring certain things to the book and the book is able to speak to you also says something about the universality of this book, that it can cut across cultures, that it can cut across religion and nationalities and geographical borders and generations. Right? So I think that's something worth to kind of like mull over as we conclude today's session. Okay, so thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you, not next week, because next week is mid-semester break, and as well as Eid. So Eid Mubarak to all of you who are observing
You too, Doctor.
Ramadan. So inshallah, I hope we have a very good celebration with our family, our loved
Inshallah.
ones. I will see you the week after. What date would that be?
Doctor, do we have an e-task out of the discussion? Do we have to fill in something other than the
will-
3 poems?
I will upload it on the e-task will be comparison between this book and the Yellow Bird. So whatever you have made in terms of notes and everything, pick on something that you will then explore for the Yellow Bird. So in 2 weeks' time, on the 20th of May, inshallah, I would like you to do your reading of the comparison between the Yellow Bird and the Corpse Washer. So we started with a non-canonical text. Okay, we started with an Iraqi novel, and we're going to compare the Iraqi novel against the American novel. So you get to decide what aspect of this novel you want to compare with the Yellow Bird. So this becomes the point of departure. All right. So in 2 weeks' time, week 8, when on the 20th, I would like to hear the same discussion, but this time around, picking up something that is comparable between the Corpse Washer with the Yellow Bird. Okay.
Thank you.
So that would be, Ruby, in answer to your question, that would be the e-task. Yeah, so you are looking at e-task number 3, where you compare the 2 novels. Okay, right? Any other questions? So this week, basically no e-task. But I noticed some of you have not completed the second e-task. Only one person has uploaded. So please do that as well. Try to kind of complete your work. Salim and Fuzla, I got your video essay, but you haven't uploaded it on UKM Folio. So if possible, please try to upload it, the same copy that you sent me on UKM Folio, and please try to finish e-task 2, so that by the end of this 7 weeks, the first 7 weeks, you would have done 1 assignment and 2 e-tasks, which means you have 3 more e-tasks to go and 2 more assignments to go before you conclude the semester. Okay? Try to finish reading all the novels as well, because once we come back, we'll go a lot faster, inshallah. All right, so thank you so much. Have a good break next week. I hope you really get a good break, try to rest, and I'll see you when you come back, inshallah. Okay?
Thank you so much, Doctor. Happy
Thank you,
Eid.
Doctor.
Thank
Hari
you.
Raya.
Bye-bye.
Assalamualaikum. Selamat Hari Raya to those. Mubarak.
Selamat Hari Raya.
Bye.